On October 18, 1963, a passerby discovered the body of a man on the mountain road west of Karita Station on the Nippon Line in Kanto-gun, Fukuoka Prefecture, Japan. The passerby called the cops right away. When the local police arrived at the crime site, they easily discovered the victim's identification. Murata Kinao, 58, worked for a local logistics company as a dispatch worker. He had multiple knives in his body and was out of breath when he was discovered, and the tool suspected of being the murder weapon was lying nearby in the grass. Another victim was discovered around 2 kilometers from the scene of the crime. As the police investigated, he was Mori Goro, a 38-year-old Murata Kinao's comrade. Mori Goro was a logistics company driver. The cops discovered a black leather bag containing 160,000 yen in cash and a stack of receipts in Mori's pickup truck. They discovered that the two had originally received 430,000 yen, which they collected from the company's arrears from various families who had fallen behind on their payments. The murderer may have then taken the lacking 270,000 yen. The police soon identified the perpetrator as a 37-year-old middle-aged man named Nishiguchi Akira after investigating, interviewing the victim's co-workers and comparing fingerprints. The police investigated all the background information of Akira Nishiguchi and found that Akira Nishiguchi had multiple previous convictions and had been in and out of jail 4 times for robberies and frauds. Nishiguchi Akira was a truck driver of a logistics company. During his duties, he found by mistake that the company had hired a logistics firm to distribute and collect tobacco. He then came up with the idea of robbing the cash collecting car after seeing enormous amounts of arrears being returned to the corporation repeatedly. Following a plan, on October 17, 1963, he waited for the day when his acquaintance Murata was responsible for the supply of tobacco and lied to help him deliver the tobacco jointly. The 3 of them, Murata, Mori and Nishiguchi Akira, collected the arrears, but right after that, Nishiguchi brutally murdered the 2 and stole the money. Nishiguchi Akira was immediately placed on the national wanted list by the Japanese police. He promptly left Fukuoka City and headed to Saga Prefecture after waking up the next day and seeing the wanted news with his name and photo in the morning paper. Nishiguchi frowned and considered his options, thinking that being chased by the cops was not an option. He made the decision to direct and conduct a suspended animation in order to escape. He then sent a letter to his wife and to Yukuhashi police station saying, "I caused a lot of trouble to everyone, I'm really sorry. But I don't want you to ridicule me after you arrest me, so I deal with myself first." A coat and a pair of black shoes were discovered on the deck of a contact few days later, on October 24. A suicide note signed by Nishiguchi was found inside the coat pocket. The passenger contacted the police station right away. When the cops arrived, they wondered if Nishiguchi Akira had actually committed suicide by jumping into the sea. The authorities scoured the waters near the contact ship for most of the day to confirm this finding, but Nishiguchi Akira's body was not found. They have investigated the nearby stores and discovered that a man who resembled Akira Nishiguchi entered into one of them and purchased a pair of old shoes. Using a variety of sources, the police concluded that Nishiguchi had committed suicide by jumping into the water this time. But this is just a ruse of Nishiguchi to get the police to abandon their pursuit of him. After the scheme, Akira Nishiguchi left Okayama and traveled east to Kobe, then to Osaka, Kyoto, Nagoya, and other cities. Nishiguchi Akira then pretended to be Professor Takahashi of Kyoto University in order to hide his true identity. Because information transmission channels were not as extensive and swift as they are now, no one who saw Nishiguchi Akira after he fled for a great distance denied his identity as a professor, and no one has yet recognized his true identity. In one of the hotels he spent during his escapes, he had his next murder victims. Fujita, the owner of the hotel, and her mother were the only ones living in the hotel where Nishiguchi stayed. During his stay at the hotel, somehow, he and Fujita became lovers. But Nishiguchi, who spent money lavishly, gambled and also needed money to survive with his escaping, killed Fujita and her mother without remorse, stole their belongings and pawned them. Nishiguchi Akira fled to Tokiwa City in Fukushima Prefecture after completing the crime. He changed then his identification once more and pretended to be a lawyer this time. While scamming as a lawyer, Nishiguchi Akira spotted an 81-year-old lawyer. After some investigation, Nishiguchi Akira discovered that the lawyer lives alone and that his family is quite affluent. So, on December 29, he went to the lawyer's house alone on the grounds of entrusting a civil lawsuit. Nishiguchi Akira assassinated the lawyer while he was reading through the documents, seizing some of his property, watches, and lawyer badges as his own. Nishiguchi Akira fled to Kyushu towards the end of the year. When he arrived in the Kyushu area, Nishiguchi Akira changed his name again to Mikawamura Kakuharu, a Tokyo lawyer. He tracked down Furukawa Tairyu, who was working on civilization in Fukuoka prison where he worked with lawyers. Why he suddenly targeted Furukawa? It turned out that he had seen Furukawa Tairyu 10 years ago while he was serving his sentence in Fukuoka prison for his crimes of fraud. Nishiguchi happened to find out in the news that Furukawa Tairyu was collecting or receiving funds from other people for the reason of his campaign in helping the wrongfully convicted prisoners, and his plan was pretending to be a lawyer from Tokyo and support Furukawa with his campaign and then steal the money from him. Furukawa is appreciative for his assistance and has no doubts of his true identity since Nishiguchi had superb acting skills and excellent eloquence. Then one day, Nishiguchi Akira visited Furukawa's home. Ruriko Furukawa, a 10-year-old daughter of Tairyu Furukawa, saw Nishiguchi's face. Ruriko then went to her mother and told her, "Mom, the guest from our house looks like Akira Nishiguchi on the wanted poster." Why was it that the little girl recognized the face of Nishiguchi Akira? It turned out that the little girl's class had a pupil whose name was almost identical to Akira Nishiguchi's. It appeared to be extremely similar at first glance. Also, she saw the wanted posters every day on her way to school and looked at the name along with the photo several times since she felt it was intriguing. Just for that trivial thing, she memorized the face. The Furukawa and his wife thought that their daughter was joking, so they reprimanded. "This is our guest. It's rude to say that." But Tairyu Furukawa saw his daughter as strangely desperate of her claims. He couldn't believe it at first, but gradually his suspicions on the lawyer became bigger. The Mr. Mikawamura Kakuharu in front of him, in terms of appearance, was very similar to the one on the wanted flyers. Finally, Tairyu Furukawa was convinced that the man identifying himself as a lawyer whom he was talking to at that moment was really Nishiguchi Akira, the serial killer. To avoid endangering his family, Furukawa and his wife decided not to bother him first. They pretended to get along with Akira Nishiguchi as usual that night, and eagerly allowed him spend the evening at home. After Akira Nishiguchi had fallen asleep, Furukawa and his wife rushed their children to the local police station to report the crime in the middle of the night. And so finally he was apprehended after 77 days of murder and robbery thanks to the little girl's awareness. The chief of the 1st Division said, the policemen all over Japan had done investigation with their full force. But eventually, the girl's eyes are better than the 12,000 policemen's eyes. Nishiguchi Akira was charged with 5 murders, 10 frauds, and 2 robberies. At the trial, prosecutions nicknamed him as Evil Son and the Black Gold Medalist. On December 11, 1970, Nishiguchi Akira, at the age of 44, was executed. What do you think of this case? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. If you are into these kind of videos, consider subscribing to Darkwatch and turn on the notification bell to get notified for more updates.